Alright, Patrick Sutherland, thank you so much for coming in today from EA. It's great to have you here at Bioware. We're so excited to show you our new game called Anthem. We think it's called Anthem, who knows, it could be called something else. Please have a try of this new game. We think it's going to be the Bob Dylan of gaming, everybody. Okay, here we go. Pretty great, huh?
I'm not sure, but I think maybe you just took Afterburner and then copy-pasted Iron Man onto it. I think that's what happened here.
This is brand new IP. Well, what are you talking about? This is hot off the presses, man. What game are you playing?
How long have you guys been developing this?
About 5 years.
How much money have I spent on this?
About $400 million.
I'm just not sure that this game meets the very high quality standards that we set for ourselves here at EA.
Oh, it's just fucking ship it.
Ship it.
Okay, so guys, this is the day after April Fool's. Funny how we didn't see this article drop on April Fool's, because I mean I would have believed it anyway. Like, is
this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
April Fool's joke.
It's
everybody.
an April Fool's joke.
It's
people.
the coolest way of saying it these days.
Just was wondering, is this
Holy shit! We knew that Anthem's development process would have been rocky. Wasn't really expecting it to be as rocky as has been revealed. Jason Schreier has done an expose on it. We're going to give you not quite a blow by blow. We're going to give you the major headline items coming up right after the drop. Here we go, ladies and
we
gentlemen.
already did the drop.
No,
but I guess we're doing the drop again. Let's
drop.
do it again.
Okay, so first of all, this entire episode is based on the work of Jason Schreier of Kotaku. I know a lot of people don't like Kotaku. We love to make fun of Kotaku.
We like to make fun of all media publications.
It's true, but seriously, do give it a click, because
Definitely.
Jason's done incredible work here. We've linked in the description below.
If we remember, also check
We'll
out
definitely
Variety.
remember.
Variety also did a wonderful piece recently on The Division 2.
And they rated Sekiro 4 out of 10.
No, was it them? No, it was someone else that did that.
Was that really?
Yeah, it was someone else that did
else.
that.
They
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
would have.
It was probably Variety also.
So, okay, Anthem. Now, Anthem is a clusterfuck of a video game.
Yes.
Anthem defenders are
I
they're
think
crazy.
They've come around now.
I know, even now I still get people in my timeline, on my feed all the time on Twitter being like, remember that time that you said that, Anthem was the worst game that BioWare's ever put out? You lost all credibility with me then.
that's
I'm
right.
like, are we living in the same fucking universe?
It's
Like, what's the matter with
It's
you?
like when people say, I can't believe Skill Up's on Laymen Gaming, man. I'm disappointed. I've lost respect for you.
really
Laymen
was.
Gaming is where it's at, people. It's where you get the news and the best reviews.
Anthem came out with a 55 Metacritic score,
Which is generous.
Which is generous. Commercially,
No, it's
critically,
probably 55. I would say
around that,
it's
sure.
around 55.
critically panned, and it really stunk of a game that was rebooted very close to its release. 'Cause we've
Definitely.
seen this before in major AAA games where they come out so separate, so divorced from what was promised, and you're kind of like, well, obviously lots of shit went down during development. Now, the person that usually does the exposés on what went wrong during development is Jason Schreier of Kotaku. He's finally turned his attention to this, or managed to get enough sources to go on record about it.
About 19 people in general.
He wrote an 11,000 word piece on it detailing a lot of the stuff that went wrong, and it's a fascinating tale. So we're going to deal with it in themes rather than a blow by blow, because
Yes.
a blow by blow would be really painful. Go and read the full article, really recommend it. But
Definitely.
some major themes emerge. The first of those is what, Sam?
So I think the big one is, everybody, that there was no vision for this fucking game. Like, it sounds like the whole time, up to the last moment, or at least up to E3 of 2017, they weren't sure. I mean, they didn't know what the hell was going on. And I think the trailer itself, in the article, it kind of says that it took the trailer for both studios to be like, oh, okay, I kind of get what this is. And for me, when you are kind of dealing with that, that is bad territory to be in.
I mean,
especially for a AAA, a lot of, you've got a lot of reputation to uphold. You've got previous games that, that have paved the way to that moment. A lot of people are going to be expecting another great game, and Andromeda, of course, didn't do too well.
I think the main thing is that, you basically had a studio that had been working with this idea for a number of years, but had never been able to coalesce around a clear vision for what this is. They had a senior leadership team that didn't really come from their previous like Dragon Age and Mass Effect successes. A lot of the senior team were sort of newer people to the studio. They lost Casey Hudson, who was their lead on a number of other games before, and was really like the strong, decisive leader within Bioware. And so everyone was just going in different directions with no clear statement to say, this is the game we're making. And I think that had a lot of flow-on effects as well in terms of studios fighting themselves, because numerous Bioware studios were working on this. None of them had that clear vision at the top for what they wanted to see.
Yeah.
And so that meant that everyone had their own vision, and all the studios ended up fighting amongst themselves while they were trying to figure it all out.
Which makes sense, really, because, of course, if there's not someone at the top saying, well, it doesn't, this is what's going on, then both of those studios are, of course, going to try and put their own individual seal on that, or their own agenda, of course.
And I think one of the most interesting things about this lack of vision was that, it was not clear to this team that it was a looter shooter, right? I think we all sort of take it for granted that they were always building this, like, Destiny competitor looter shooter forever, but it really only became a looter shooter in the last 18 months. Before that, they had no idea. They knew it was an RPG, they knew it was an action RPG, but they weren't clear if it was going to be a looter shooter.
It definitely had an identity crisis, everybody. One of the things it says in the article is that in a lot of these meetings, upper management especially, didn't want to have conversations that had anything to do with Destiny, okay? So for me, that really shows an insecurity, I think, because if you're not able to talk about a clear competitor in the space, you might not know if you are actually a looter shooter yet, but you do know that Destiny's weapon mechanics, Destiny's world building, there's so many great things that you can kind of learn from, but to not even want to, have those conversations about another AAA game that's really taking center stage, dude, that just shows a huge insecurity about your own identity and your own product.
It was like a banned word. So whenever someone would mention Destiny, the senior leaders would be like, la 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 la, doesn't exist.
And his name was...
Maybe she wrote it down.
No, I can't spell it. All right.
Destiny 2.
Shut your fucking mouth!
But absolute insanity, because you're talking about the leading looter shooter in the space at that time, and a game that gets many things right. I know a lot of people hate Destiny, but it gets so many things right, and to be too afraid to talk about that game in the context of their own development process,
definitely,
just absolute madness. I really couldn't believe when I read that.
Yeah, and not to mention, they've been around for so long now, Destiny, in terms of, regardless if they've got a lot of stuff right or wrong, you can definitely learn from their track record of how to move forward in this looter shooter. And I remember we made the comments, especially you on your long-ass goddamn review of like an hour or like 7 hours. It did feel like it was so new to the party, and it also leans into this in the article that they didn't have the experience or people on the team, it seemed, that really were, that understood what they were trying to make in terms of looter shooters.
It's so true, because, as I said in my review, I was like, listen, this is a game that's learned nothing from the looter shooter genre over the last 10 years, 20 years we've had this genre. They've learned nothing from it. This clearly shows that they weren't in the space to be able to have conversations where they could learn from that genre. One, because they didn't know that they were that genre yet. They didn't know they were a looter shooter, so they couldn't frame those that context. And secondly, when they did figure it out, they were too afraid to talk about the competition because they were so insecure in their own self.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
What I mean? I still don't understand, any business, once you know what you are, you go, okay, cool, who's doing it just as good, or who's doing it the best?
This is why the Laymen always deeply study Yong Ye's videos.
Exactly.
Every single video Yong puts out, everything, the framing, the backgrounds.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we say Yong out just like he does.
Correct.
Make sure that we are one-upping our competition every time. Exactly. We're onto you, Yong, okay?
So the next big challenge that Jason Schreier identifies in this article is Frostbite. Now, Frostbite is the engine that they used to create the game. It was originally built by DICE for Battlefield games, and then EA said, you know what would be cool? If we didn't have to pay any more license fees for using engines. So we'll just use Frostbite for everything. It gives us a shared language that all our developers can speak, and we own it all, so let's just do that for everything. Bioware had originally shipped Dragon Age Inquisition on Frostbite, which was an extremely painful process, but they did it. And they were then at the say again.
And it got Game of the Year.
It got Game of the Year from a few publications. I think Inquisition was not a great game, but anyway, that's another story. Sure. Mass Effect Andromeda, they were deep in development of Andromeda while all this was happening with Anthem. And so, you know, they were very intimately involved with Frostbite, but it was just a bad engine to be using for what they were trying to do because it just had a lot of technical overhead. And interestingly enough, tell them what they learned about EA and their support they provided.
Okay, so the funny thing is, right? It depends. I mean, I don't agree with it, but like, it just, of course,
It's funny.
Just
It's so
fucking
EA.
Standard EA, right? You got the support really based on how much money they thought your game was gonna make. So
It's the most EA thing ever. I love it.
You know, Anthem, I reckon they got 5 minutes a day then. FIFA got friggin' 23.5 hours support.
Because FIFA was in the process of transitioning over to Frostbite as well, so it required a lot of
it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean,
sure.
if I own a company, you know, if I own a company, I'm of course going to make sure that everyone speaks the same language. The problem there is the language that everyone was speaking, as it says in the article, it was filled with razor blades.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Like, the whole thing was just so cooked, you know. You're better off just making sure everyone understands the Unreal Engine or something, you know, or another type of engine that's tried and tested and has a lot of applications out there that they can use.
For sure.
But, you know, yeah, Frostbite, even if it is the third Frostbite or whatever it is now, it just seems like it's so specific in what it can do. It didn't even have a third-person mode, or it didn't have a save and load aspect to it. That's just stuff that was just missing.
Yeah, for sure. This lack of leadership, this lack of vision, and this huge technical sort of deficit led to a tremendous amount of burnout and crunch within the team. And I think the main point of the article is this, and it's a really interesting point. It's this idea that Bioware was very reliant internally on what they called their Bioware Magic, which was that everything will be a clusterfuck for years, but then in the last few months or the last year, everything's going to come together in the last minute and we're going to make an amazing game. Just trust me.
Yeah.
Trust me, you know? And so, you know, rather than rely on a clear process and rather than build things sequentially, it was like, okay, let's just leave everything in chaos for ages and then we'll destroy our people for the last year with crunch to make sure that we eventually ship a game.
And I think the worst thing that was to happen with this whole Dragon Age thing, yes, it's great that it was a fantastic game, that it set the template. It set the template of, oh, this became a fantastic game. We destroyed all our developers in the process, but hey, look at the Bioware Magic, baby. It was there. So they thought they could do it again with this. Now, I think if Dragon Age was not a success, we probably wouldn't have seen the same kind of process put in place for the Anthem.
And one of the most alarming things about this is that it did lead to a lot of mental health issues within the development team. A lot of people had to take stress leave. A lot of people didn't come back from that stress leave. A lot of people just left the studio altogether because they couldn't hack it. And when I say hack it, it's like, fair enough. Like, if you're being pushed to this level and just being asked to crunch like this with no clear vision and so much stress going on around you, of course you're going to be like, you know what, fuck this shit, I'm out. Like, that makes total sense to me.
Sounds like Rockstar 2.0, really.
Well, a lot, but you say Rockstar, but so many development studios go through this. It's so standard in AAA games development.
Yeah, I'm talking about like just things that have come to the surface. Rockstar seems like the most recent one.
Yeah, there's always a lot. So I think beyond that, there's a really interesting story about EA's role in all this. Okay, now listen, we are the #1 EA hate channel. Okay,
let me get this.
Let's get our feedback blinders. Right, we've got our little our feedback shield
all right, look,
here.
We love EA. Okay, so don't think for a moment we are not in their corner every step of the way. But sometimes we've got to call it as it is.
Correct.
And it seems like EA is not the bad guy in this moment.
I think you should take the umbrella off now.
I was going to say, it's hard to really sit here with this thing.
A lot of people say, fuck EA, they're the bad guys, they're the ones that ruin
We would
everything.
never say that.
No, about Anthem.
yeah,
but I've actually always said from the start, you can't blame EA for Anthem. They gave Bioware 6 years to do this. if you read through this article, what's so fascinating is at no point do they say EA made us do this thing, or made us do that thing, or made us do this thing. The one thing they say is Frostbite. Now, fair enough, obviously. When EA says you've got to use Frostbite, that's a decision that's on EA. But at the same time, you know, Bioware had already shipped a game under Frostbite. They'd had a lot of experience with it up to that point, and they were working with it a lot during Andromeda. So you'd infer from that they'd be fairly comfortable with this tool. But at the same time, it's like, okay, that's one point where you'd say, all right, that's an
Definitely, and I think also it's not a... Sure, they want to save on licensing fees, but, you know, we're not hearing EA say, put, you know, heaps of microtransactions into this game.
Correct.
They might have been saying that, right? They might have been saying, once this game is successful, we want to make sure that you do that. But, you know, at the release of this game, it's pretty light on the microtransaction, and it seems like they had bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, at no point in this article do they talk about the pressure that EA was applying to change the game in specific ways. If EA were this awful, like, omnipresent force within Anthem's development, you could absolutely bet the 19 people that were interviewed would have said, oh yeah, and EA, fuck those guys, they did this. But no one said that, or at least that's not what Jason reported. So it really indicates that Bioware were running their own ship, making their own decisions, and fucking it up all on themselves, you know?
Yeah, and I think we've made this comment before. I think EA was hoping that, I mean, speculation, but I'm sure EA was hoping that Anthem was going to be the IP that would rejuvenate the brand of EA to more hardcore gamers. You know, so that's probably why they were like, you take your time, man. Just make sure it's a great game, you know?
There's one interesting story that the article relates where Patrick Soderlund, who was very senior in EA at the time, he was kind of like their number 2 man after Andy Wilson, our good mate.
We love him.
You know, and he goes to play an Anthem demo, you know, fairly early on. He plays it for a weekend, comes back to Bioware, and he says, this is garbage. This is not what you promised me. Make a better game. So then the studio had to go for 6 weeks, go through this massive crunch process, and then basically redesign large portions of the game, including adding flying, which was something that flying was like in the game, out, in the game. And so when he played it, there was no flying. And then when he played it again for the second demo, they added flying back in. They sort of touched up the graphics. They added all this stuff. And he's like, this is a game I want to play now, you know? So that really shows... You know, it's all about the graphics.
It's all about the graphics. And we can thank Patrick Soderlund to making sure that there is flying, because it seems like there might not have been the flying mechanics if Soderlund wasn't so taken with it. Because even when they did it for the demo, they were like, yeah, this might be in the game, who knows? We're just going to throw it in for the demo anyway, and hopefully he likes it.
Yeah, you know? but like, you know, Patrick's, you know, again, we love to meme that guy, but at the end of the day, like, he basically said what we said, which is Anthem is garbage, make me a better game, right? So we can't have a go at EA for, like, forcing them to include flying in Anthem. It's the one fucking good thing about the game. Do you know what I mean?
It's
like,
fun, but even
that's fun.
Even that gets old like everything else in that game after 3 hours.
It does. So I guess the interesting, the summary point for this EA involvement thing is that I do not believe that EA is to blame when it comes to Anthem.
Definitely not.
And the article does not support that. And if anything, we should thank EA because they're the ones
made it better.
that made that one thing fun. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I never thought I'd say that. EA actually did something good. Like, what the actual hell?
Uncle, you better come look at this.
Dial 911. Tell the police to get up here quick. Somebody's about to get killed.
But I think it really comes down to, you know, all of this stuff was just kind of hidden from the consumer. And right, like, I get it why we didn't see any of this.
Yeah.
But the result is we get some sort of trailer at E3 at 2017 that says, hey, it's going to be like this, guys. And then the finished product is so vastly different.
Yeah.
And I think it just shows that there was a fundamental problem at the management level that the vision was just never there, because one moment we're seeing one thing, at the end of it it's a completely different game.
Yeah, I think that the article makes the point that at the time of that E3 presentation in 2017, you know, they didn't know what the game was. In 2018, last year, at the start of the year, they had one playable level. One. Like that, as in, like, you know, mission, right? That game was so far from being finished, but we were sold this incredible trailer and they were telling us all these things about integrated story and a dynamic. Well, it was all built on bullshit because it wasn't real. And like, this is, I think, one of the most important lessons of this entire debacle, which was that companies are so comfortable promising this stuff, thinking, fuck it, if it doesn't work, we'll fix it when it's live. It's
Yeah.
like the live service model now gives these guys, and the articles talk specifically about this, where they're like, we know it's broken, we know it's unfinished, we know not everything is there, but it's a live service, so we'll fix it when it's live.
I don't know if I completely agree with that. I think that in terms of, I think that they look at that and go, let's try get all these things, and then it becomes a practice of this. We have to dial things back from the Frostbite technology, from budget and whatever. I think that, but that's the main result from us seeing certain trailers and then the finished product. It's because they just, it's been dialed back so much.
It'd be like next Laymen episode live from
New York City.
Yeah, live from New York City, and our special guest, Donald Trump. He's going to be here, right here on the Laymen couch. You know what I mean? And then next episode,
let me just say, I love Laymen. They're the best. Okay.
Just have a green screen and then Stan with a blonde wig doing these ones.
Don't subscribe to Young. Young's not great.
So but you can't just lie to your consumers like that. You can't just say this is what we want to do, and if you don't do it, it's like, oh well, it doesn't matter, no big deal.
Yeah.
But it just happens so often in video games, and it's so frustrating. But every time and it will continue to happen. It will never stop because people keep pre-ordering all this bullshit and whatever else. And anyway, so look, after all of this, Bioware actually responded to this article. The funny thing is they hadn't actually read the article yet. They just been sent...
How do we know that,
because
Jason
Schreier sent through a list of bullet points in advance.
Oh, I see.
And then just after he published the article, a few minutes after, he got the response. And the response obviously would have been pre-written. It would have been approved by PR. You can't just write that response.
Definitely.
Send.
Definitely.
So obviously they pre-cooked this thing. And it's pretty shitty. This is the major line, the major most interesting line. As a studio and a team, we accept all criticism that will come our way for the games we make, especially from our players. The creative process is often difficult. The struggles and challenges of making video games are very real, but the reward of putting something we created into the hands of our players is amazing. People in this industry put so much passion and energy into making something fun. We don't see the value in tearing down one another or one another's work. We don't believe articles that do that are making our industry or our craft better. Now, that's fucked. That's a really fucked way to
instead of
do
just
this.
being like, I just think there's some responsibility that needs to be kind of taken, and especially now, at the moment, BioWare's reputation is so damaged. They just don't need to put out shitty press releases like that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they're the ones that put their staff through the ringer with an awful development process that led to mental health issues for multiple staff.
Sure.
They're the ones that lied to consumers for many years, inflating expectations and then delivering a completely unfinished, broken product.
Sure.
And then they have the audacity to say that the likes of Jason Schreier, who is reporting on all this mess and making it public, have the audacity to say that he's the bad guy and that he's not making the industry better. Articles like this, discussions like this, make the industry better because they stop this shit from happening in the future. So fuck you, EA. Like, that's a really, really,
Is that
really...
Bioware or EA?
It's EA Bioware.
Fuck you, Bio EA. Okay, we'll just make it real.
But it's Bioware actually.
Okay.
It's Bioware.
So fuck you, Bioware.
Fuck you, Bioware.
Yeah, because you're right. I mean, they are, in this moment right now, they're the reason why they are making the industry worse in this particular moment.
Yeah.
You're putting people under huge stress and you're releasing products that are bullshit. So,
Correct.
good on Jason Schreier, okay?
Yeah,
Yet
totally.
again, he's given the industry some great stuff that we need to talk about.
Yeah, so look, it was a long episode, but we wanted to take you through that. As I said, really recommend reading through the article in full. It's 11,000 words, but it's very, very good stuff.
Yeah.
It's one of the great stories of our industry. In years to come, we will still reference Anthem's development the way we referenced Destiny 2's development. You know what I mean? And all the lessons that were learned from that.
Or even
and
Overwatch and stuff like that. And
all those games.
And I'm looking forward to hearing more on the development of Diablo Immortal.
That's going to be that's going to be the next big story.
I'm looking forward to that.
But for now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching, and we will see you probably tomorrow.
Probably tomorrow?
Wait, Borderlands 3 information is the following day.
No, that's tomorrow their time, I
No, it's
think.
exactly. So.
Oh, no, God.
The point is,
Australia's back in time
soon,
or something.
It's going to be an Epic Games exclusive to announce, no
Something
doubt
like
about
that.
it. So
See you, fam.
We'll see you there.